being helpful, it turned out backfiring because once you help people too much, they tend to rely on that. And we learned the hard way that you have to make the difference between being generous and saying enough is enough. I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere. So
backtrack for a second, because again, every time you talk, you just unpacking a whole lot of good stuff. You got some goodness coming out of it. I should know since you related to your parents. So, first of all, what you said about being able to say no. How about no is a complete sentence? Okay, N-O period is a complete sentence. I need people to. Well, what's up, everybody? It's your girl here, Breanna Colón. Thank you so much for joining me for another podcast episode, Your Life, Your Money with Breanna Colón. To those of you watching online on YouTube, welcome, welcome, welcome. To those of you listening in on the podcast, thank you for taking the time to listen. Today, I am here with another Integrity Financial family members with an S, another Integrity Financial family. I can't talk right today. I don't know. Maybe it's nervous energy. But anyway, today we have Enam and Marquia. Can y'all just say hello to the people?
Hello.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. So I want to jump right in. Today, you guys have a powerful story, and I really want to allow our listeners the opportunity to really capture kind of where you guys were up to where you are now and everything in between, because a lot happened in between, really. But it's all been, towards what's really happening great now in just a really short 3-year period. You guys have really, really made some major strides and changes in your financial life and your life overall, really. So I want to start with going back to kind of finances as a whole before we met, because I know we met in 2020. So prior to that, how was things for you guys financially on a regular basis?
Well, when we first started, we were unfortunately, my mother passed away in 2019. So we were like in the transition stage in the beginning, and we were thinking about moving, to another area. So that's when around that time is when we heard about you, because my mother and father did financial information stuff towards stuff that you had to offer. So we needed the finances and we needed the foundation, because we knew little or nothing about finances, and we also needed somebody as far as wisdom on how to maintain it. When we were still at the house in Fort Washington, we were just relying on income tax. We were talking about it before the day, like income tax, and it was just, that was the lump sum of what we gained. But we did a whole lot in that situation. We did a whole lot of sharing. We shared some of that income tax with her siblings, or her father, God rest his soul, and other people, because we was trying to help other people out.
Right.
But sometimes helping people sometimes is a bad idea, because you still end up on the short end of the stick. When you do
say that right there.
You don't really benefit from it, because it's like a vicious cycle. It just keeps getting worse and worse if you don't nip it in the bud, if you don't just stop doing it.
Yeah. So wait a minute. Let me jump in right there before you keep going. Hold that thought though, because you're saying a whole lot of good stuff right there that I need to unpack. First, you talked about the income tax, because you said y'all were basically like counting on this lump sum money to come in once a year. That was kind of your extra money, so to speak. And how much on average were y'all getting for income tax? What was kind of the range?
Well, yeah, like 12. It was like 12,000.
Yeah. Oh, y'all were getting a lot. Oh, wow. Okay. Got you. So you get like $12,000 or so, and all of a sudden, everybody already know it's like Christmas, because Enam and Marquia just got a check from their income tax. So that's probably what it felt like. And so, would they were they coming to you because they knew that you were going to get some money and they were like, hey, you need to help me out with this, or were you volunteering to do it? How did that go?
Well, some of it was some of it was our generosity.
Okay.
Before then, it was our generosity, but we were trying to be helpful. But being helpful, it turned out backfiring because once you help people too much,
Hmm.
they tend to rely on that, and
Right. Right.
we learned the hard way that you have to make the difference between being generous and saying enough is enough. I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere. So
That's
part
right.
of it was us, and I own that as a husband and as a breadwinner in the home. And then
Hmm.
another part of it had to do with them, gimme Jimmy. They wanted to, keep wanting it.
Yeah.
But
I like how you put that. Gimme Jimmy.
yeah,
I hadn't
Jimmy,
heard
Jimmy,
that
Jimmy.
phrase before.
It's been a while since we used to say that, but they just kept asking, 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 and we was like, you know what, we started this. So that's when we started doing a transition, going from Fort Washington to another area.
Yeah.
And once we went to another area and we met you through my parents, that's when things uh started to be laid, laying the foundation. The foundation started to be place because the wisdom that you was given us step by step.
Gotcha.
It took a little bit, but it was worth it at the end.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So let me just, for the sake of the audience, because I need y'all to understand, and I don't mean y'all as in you, Enam and Marquia, but I'm talking about the audience, about when it comes to income tax. I want to talk about that for a minute because many of us tend to wait all year long for this large sum of money to come one time, and then it's gone as fast as you get it. And there's multiple problems with that because number one, if you are getting a lump sum check and then you are struggling all year long, that's already a problem because you are letting the IRS hold on to your money and they're not giving you interest. They're just holding on to your money all year long and then giving it right back to you, giving you a portion of the money back. So when you have that lump sum, it sounds nice because like, oh man, I'm about to get a windfall. I'm getting this big chunk of money and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But if you already don't have the discipline that from all year long of being able to set aside money or save money, then it's going to definitely be that much more difficult when you do get a lump sum of money of knowing what and how to properly deal with it. Second of all, like I was just saying, if you're allowing the IRS to hold your money and then you're struggling all year, you got to rethink that. Like, okay, wait a minute. Does this make sense? I'm not earning anything on this money and I'm struggling all year. Maybe I should change my exemptions a little bit so that I can actually have more money during the year for me when it actually counts. Every day is what really, really matters. And so sometimes people do need to make adjustments to their exemptions so that they can receive more money into their paycheck on a regular basis. Now, it doesn't matter. It's not going to help you to get more money in your paycheck if you don't then have the discipline to say, okay, I'm going to have a budget and I'm going to plan, I'm going to manage my money in such a way that I'm going to use this extra money that's now coming into my check during the year in a better way. So you got multiple layers because I wanted to make sure we took some time on this because there's a lot of people that do that, what you guys have done or were doing and, waiting for that check and then it's gone as fast as it came. And so I want to open our minds to really think about, okay, why am I doing this? Have I been doing this properly? Should I be doing this a different way? How am I all year long? Am I doing okay during the year or am I struggling and then I get this one big check and I'm trying to make it last forever like Keith Sweat, but it's not working. So sometimes we got to if you want to have a different result, sometimes you got to be able to do something different. So you said, so for you guys, how much money would you say that you had saved at the time that we met in 2020? Or how much in your account?
We had like 500.
Okay. So so a little bit, but it goes back to the point that you were saying of sometimes a lot of times people just don't know what they don't know. So you were in that situation of, hey, we're getting this lump sum, but you didn't understand at the time the value of how much money should I have saved. Y'all were doing as the Bible says and being generous, which that's a good thing too. But like you said, it's like, okay, at what point do I have a cutoff? I can't just be so generous that I become the ATM, right? So, and that's essentially what happened to you guys, at least initially was like, hey, well, yeah, you know what? They're going to be getting a check. So, in fact, sometimes people get so comfortable that they'll act like your money is their money, meaning that they'll say something like, they might not be talking to you, but maybe they're talking to somebody else. Well, you know what? I'm going to have some money in January. So I'll be ready to do that in January because they're counting on your money to come and help them to do whatever it is they're going to do. But now they're acting like people can get so comfortable that they can start to feel like your money is their money. Isn't that crazy? But that's what happens. That's exactly what can happen. So in y'all's case, you realize that, hey, we want to have a different result. And at the time, y'all were still living with parents, right? Y'all were living with family. You weren't living on your own. Is that right?
No. Yeah, it was right. We wasn't living on our own.
Okay. You say that again. You were?
No, we wasn't.
Oh, okay. Okay. Right. But that was the goal, right? So when I met you guys in 2020, the goal was, I know at least one of the goals was, hey, we want to be able to buy a house. And I know, Enam, for you, you mentioned about wanting to retire, by 58, and you were 41 at the time. And you guys also have a couple of kids, nice boys. Y'all part of the boys club. Shout out to the boys club because I'm part of that club too. They have 2 and I have 3. And so so they have 3 growing boys that they have to consider and think about as well in terms of their financial future. And so at the time that we met, Marquia had come into some money that she had inherited because of the passing of a family member. And, I'm sure that you guys that are listening and watching know how it can be when family members come into money and you have other family members who have a sense of entitlement. Sometimes it feels like, well, some of this should have been coming to me. Or if it's not, then you're going to share it with me type of thing. And so that can become family drama very, very quickly. And so, while at the beginning of this stage, at least for you guys, y'all were smart enough to realize like, okay, we're about to come into this money. We want to make sure that we make some wise choices. So let's seek some counsel to kind of figure out like, okay, what's the plan from here? Okay. So, so initially I know that we had planned out because they, the amount, I won't say the exact amount, but let's just say it was several $100,000. It was a significant amount of money. And so we had sat out and planned because based on what y'all's goals were, I know you had goals at the time. We were talking about a couple of businesses that y'all were working on. We talked about buying the house and we talked about having some that was just going to be saved. And then we also had some that was just going to be for income. And I also want to point out because the beauty that you're going to find about this story that we're talking about here today is that they started out at the time that I met them, they were a lower income family. And I want you guys to really hear everything that's being said today, because I want you to know what's possible on any income. That's really the story. A lot of times people say, well, oh, if I make more money, when I get a bigger check, a bigger salary, when I start this other job, when I this, when I that, if they would do this, it's always some other excuse when really the reality is, are you managing well where you are? Can we answer that question? Are you managing well where you are? If you're managing well where you are, then you will manage well when you get more. And then you will manage well when you get more than that. To whom much is given, much is required. And so you need to understand how to manage what you have and what's required. What is the expectation at certain levels? And so that is one of the things that I'm proud to say that Enam and Marquia have mastered. But before we get to all of that, so let's get into this whole money situation. So you got the money and we made this plan of you're going to, we had talked about house. Now, even when, a lot of times when people come into money, especially in large quantities, they're like, oh, I'm going to buy this big house. I'm going to get this car. I want to get this, that, the other. Now I have to give it to you. You guys were very open to listening, and you were open to being conservative, because they very well could have been like, hey, I'm gonna go buy this $400,000 or $500,000 house. They could easily have done that and fallen into that trap. But y'all were very, very conservative. And do you remember what I said the cutoff should be at the time when we bought a house, when y'all bought a house? Do you remember how much it was?
300,000.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. I think it was 250. It might have been 250. We might have stretched it a little bit, but I think it was somewhere in the 250 range is where we were kind of hoping to land, which I ultimately landed in that range anyway with the house that you ended up buying. Now, let's just be real. We're in the DC metropolitan area, Maryland, DC, Virginia. Y'all that live in this area know it is not cheap to live here. And it is very difficult sometimes to find houses that are in the lower income, lower sales price, I should say, bracket. So trying to find a house that's 250, 300, that's going to accommodate a family of 4 in a comfortable area where you feel safe and all of these kinds of things can definitely be a challenge. And so, and part of our goal with the money that they had was, like I mentioned to you, they were a lower income family. So I didn't want them, I'm like, you got this money. I want this to be able to last as long as you do, and be able to carry forward for generations to come for their kids. So in order to do that, there were certain steps that they were going to need to do. So I wanted them not to be struggling at all. And because they were lower income, even buying a $250,000 mortgage could have been a little bit, a little bit tumultuous. So I said, okay, let's not have a mortgage, because it's not every day that people have that choice, that they come into enough money that they can actually pay cash for a house. So we set out this plan that they were going to have a certain amount set aside to pay cash for the house. They were not going to have a mortgage, which would keep them comfortable financially. We also set aside, we had said we were going to set aside for a certain amount for the business, certain amount for savings and different things. We just kind of laid out this whole plan. Well, the plan got derailed very quickly because, as they mentioned earlier, they tend to be generous. And so they had family members that started asking for money. And I'll let you guys talk a little bit about that. Can you just talk a little bit about like what was that like at the time that while you had, the money and you were trying to figure out decisions and, the plan, and then you have people coming at you asking you for money? Like how was that for you?
It was very, it's kind of frustrating, overwhelming, and it was very overwhelming and frustrated. And we was at each other's throat, trying to figure out how to say no.
Yeah. It was definitely very, very difficult. And at the time, I know that from our conversations, it could have easily been, it was like a constant thing of, can you help me out with my car note? Or can you, I'm just kind of giving general examples, or maybe can you help me? I have to pay the IRS, or I need to buy a car. I need some money to put down, where was it to where they made you feel guilty? So that made you like, what was the push that made you say yes each time that you were asked for money?
They made me feel guilty, and I wasn't feel like I wasn't gonna be loved enough because of her. And they had their hand out every 5 secones.
Yeah, I can understand that could be very difficult. And I think what also plays a role is that if you are in a family where the family members are not situated financially for themselves already before a family member comes into money, if they're already not situated, and let's say it's siblings and one sibling gets money and the others don't, in those scenarios, it definitely can be difficult, because it's like, hey, you in their mind, you're living high on the hog. You're doing really, really well. Like, you should be able to share some with me just because. And so, but if if family members are already doing well financially, well, and that's not to say that families don't and siblings don't fight over money, even when they already have money. That's very, very true. They do. Whether they have money or don't, it still happens. But it happens more so in families where they're already struggling and they're like, hey, you supposed to help me because, type of scenario. And so you had specific circumstances as to how you in particular came into the money as opposed to your siblings. So I just want to, clear the air about that it wasn't necessarily a situation of, hey, I'm just going to leave an insurance policy behind for my 3 kids. That's not your particular story. Yours was based off of some things that happened in your past, and you had to, the money was specifically designated for you for that purpose. So, so you were blessed in that way in this opportunity. So I know that at the time when we were trying to get you to buy the house, and, I got you to meet up with a realtor and all of that stuff. At the time, you had other family in your ear saying, hey, y'all need to get a mortgage loan. You remember that? How all of that stuff happened? How difficult was that for you, trying to figure out, like, who do you listen to? What do you do? And, like, what was that process like?
It was very difficult and hard because I felt like it was all about money and not love.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. I distinctly remember those conversations because I got a phone call from the realtor saying, hey, they have other family that are trying to tell them what to do, and, trying to advise them that they don't need to pay cash for a house. Nobody does that. Everybody gets a loan. And, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, are they getting advice from people who are homeowners? Let's start there, because, everybody gets a loan, but that doesn't mean that that's what everybody should do. Most people get a loan because most people don't have the cash to buy a house. You have to think about it from that perspective. That's the reality. And so if people really paid attention to, okay, if I go get this loan for $300,000, how much am I actually going to pay the bank if I keep this loan for 30 years? The price tag is something like $500,000. So you end up paying almost double for the house that you bought at $300,000. When you look at how much interest they add on to the loan, you will have paid like $500, $550 or something like that, $550,000 for the $300,000 house. So if you're in a situation to where you can pay the $250,000 or the $300,000 in cash, why would you not do that in order to not fill up the bank's pockets? And now you can fill up your own pockets in another way. Now, there's multiple ways to do stuff because you can also invest the money. There's always going to be more than one way to make money, always more than one way to invest. But one option is to consider paying cash for the house. Now, some would say, oh, no, you shouldn't pay cash for the house. You should get the loan. You should invest it. That's an option too. It is an option. What I'm really saying is that you need to seek wise counsel when you come into lump sums of money so that you can determine what is the best option for you. Their option was specific to their specific situation. There are some cases where, yes, if you invest the money and the option might be better in another scenario to invest the money that would have been paid in cash for the house and let that money grow and then pay off the house and still have cash left over. There's all kinds of ways to be able to take care of things financially. But for their particular case, paying house for the cash was going to be the best option at the time. And so, like I was saying, so then, so in the midst of this, y'all are going through and you got family that are like, hey, no, you don't need to do no loan. When really it turns out, and correct me if I'm wrong, that really what they wanted was for you not to pay cash on the house so that you could keep money available for them. Would you say that that would be about right?
Yeah. But we really had to learn a couple of things. We had to learn how to not let our emotions lead us, number one. And number two, we had to learn how to say no. It's okay to say no. It's okay. You don't have to feel like, well, I'm a victim because I said no, but it's your life, it's your future, it's your whole family. I mean, your fathers, us two, and then the 2 boys. Nobody's gonna feed us. Nobody's gonna give us a water bill, electric bill to pay off, or monthly and stuff like that. So it's up to us. You know what I'm saying? It's up to us to make those decisions. So being led out of emotions, that was the test, and learning how to say no. I mean, that's it seems like it's easy, but when you're dealing with her siblings were real close, and a lot of the connection had to do with they were living off of, I don't want to say live off of it, but they were tied to the money, where once she had her own and ended up moving to another area, she had to separate herself. And separating herself means the money was gone. The money was separated. So they had to do what they had to do and make decisions for their own. So it was like a umbilical cord being cut from a baby. Once you cut that cord, that's it. And that's that caused the friction, caused a little drama. But we grew from it. We learned from it. We moved forward from it, and we learned some good lessons towards that. And far as building the money that we had, like we got a monthly check. Learning from that from a big investment, and we end up getting money monthly for it. And also, we learned other stuff. We learn how to save. I mean, one thing my wife would do, and she's real good at, is saving. She
Yes, she
saves
is.
everything. Yeah,
Mhm.
my wife is real good at saving. She saves everything. It doesn't matter if it's large or small. She saves. So wherever you are as far as finances, if you could have that discipline to save, I mean that's a
Mhm.
huge start. That's a
Yeah, it
huge
is.
start. If anything, it's a game changer because if you save, you don't have to worry about the amount of money because a dollar ends up $5, $5 end up $20, $20 end up 100. But if you could save that within years or whatever amount of time down the road, it will add up. But if you
Mhm.
spend it, you'll never know, what you could have had with that. So saving that money is very important.
Amen, brother. Amen. You're preaching right there. You're preaching. Yeah. So let me backtrack for a second, because again, every time you talk, you just unpacking a whole lot of good stuff. You got some goodness coming out of you. I should know. I should know since you related to your parents. So, first of all, what you said about being able to say no. How about no is a complete sentence? Okay, no period
Hmm.
is a complete sentence. I need people to just get that right there today. For some people, that's going to bless their life right now in this moment. No is a
Yeah.
complete sentence, and it is actually
Yep.
okay to say
Mhm.
no. You have to
Yep.
you have to ask the question, am I really helping this person or am I enabling them? Which one is it?
Yeah.
Am I helping or am I enabling? And in y'all's case, you might have started out helping, but then it became enablement. And, and
Mhm.
so consequently, I remember after several hundred thousands of dollars, let's just real talk, several $100,000 went out the door to these family
Yeah.
members. And at that time, we had a gap in our meeting. So I didn't even know all of that was going on until we met again. I
Yeah.
remember I was in Georgia at the time and I was on the phone with you guys. And I said, yeah, when y'all called me, I think y'all called me and said something about, or maybe we were texting because we were talking about how you went from not from having the money to buy the house in cash to then not having the money to buy a house in cash. And I think that's what prompted the phone call, because I was like, what? What you mean? What you don't have money?
Yeah.
Oh no, we got to meet. Wait a minute. What is going on here?
Right.
And so I remember our conversation in you telling me how much money was left in such a short period of time because of just saying yes, saying yes, saying yes. And I remember saying to you, Enam, because if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, I remember that, at the time it was kind of like, and I think this is good for husbands and wives, when your spouse comes into some money, it is still y'all's money. You know what I mean? And I think, if I recall correctly at the time, Enam, you were kind of more like, you were not as involved as you could have been because you've kind of felt like, well, that's her money. So I don't want to, really say too much, but kind of let her take the lead on that. And I remember saying to you, like, y'all are a unit, period.
Yeah.
Y'all are a unit. This is y'all's money. And so it's going to take both of you to say, no,
Yeah.
we're not doing this. This is our family. This is our money. This is, this is what we got to do. We got to take care of ourselves. Now, unfortunately, it was a little late with all of that by the time we found out, but it wasn't too late because y'all are doing great right now. Hallelujah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure I talked about that because that does happen sometimes with spouses where one spouse gets money and they think, oh, well, I got this money from such and such, or I sold my house that I had, that I owned without my husband or without my wife or whatever. Excuse me, when y'all got married, the two became one. That means one with everything. So I know this is probably not a popular conversation at this point, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I'm going to speak the truth in love. If your desire is to do it God's way, then you have to be a unit, and a unit consists of one household. And so that being the case, everything becomes one. So whether you come into money, if I come into money, or my husband comes into money, we came into some money. And so I think that's important to note for husbands and wives, because that's another hot topic of conversation, which I'll save it for another day. But I do want you to speak to that, Enam, about how that transition was for you, of kind of going to like, all right, you know what, you're right. I need to kind of step up and, make sure that I back my wife and say, yeah, no, we're not doing this, to help y'all to be able to hold on to this money. What was that transition like for you?
Well, it was a growing transition. It was church wise, it was spiritual. I had to really um, build the confidence as far as God Himself, and I also had
Mm-hmm.
to I had to encourage my wife to say no as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the powerful things about us, we had a joint account.
Mm-hmm.
And we, even though the money was in her name, for that jumbo or that extended a large lump sum, it
Mm-hmm.
was in her name. But we remind ourselves, I'm sorry, that it was a joint account, and that what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine.
Amen.
Before then, I felt like, well, where do I fit in with it? But at the same time, uh, the mutual relationship with a husband and wife is unconditional, and the finances comes with it as well. It's an unconditional relationship for building that trust with one another. So for the husbands, I mean, I would just say you just have to like humble yourself and just know the fact that having that wife, it comes with the territory, it comes with the prize. So even though you might not inherit it on your own, it's still yours. So just if you need to seek counseling from somewhere else, if you need a small men's group at a church, whatever you need, just get what you need. But at the same time, you you are just more deserving and more worthy of that money than your wife is. So I had to learn that. I had to work on that, and I'm still working on that. And I had to really realize that um, coming into going into the new home in another area.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. All of that is really, really great. So consequently, unfortunately, because it took a while before you guys got to the strong no, and then a lot of money kind of went out the door. And so we had to revamp our plan. We're like, all right, we still got some money left. And I was like, okay, look, you say no, you tell them you don't have any more money, whatever, whatever conversation we had at Pep Talk at the time. And I remember after that, you guys kind of turned the corner. And after that, it was like, oh no, the balance is still the same, and balance is still the same. Every time we talked, the balance is still the same. And it started going up thereafter. So we did set, so we weren't able to pay cash for the house because that money had been lost. So, but the blessing was that we did take a portion of the income, and we were able to, or the money rather, and we were able to set up an additional income, because as I mentioned, they were low income earners. So we took a portion of the money and we created an income from that. So that's the check that he was mentioning that they get every month. So we set up this check for them to receive every month. And so that kind of helped supplement the income with everything else that they have coming in. From that, they were able to purchase a home, praise the Lord. And so in spite of what the enemy meant for evil, God worked it out for their good, and they still became homeowners, and they did a really good job with it. They've actually been able to renovate the basement, or you renovated the whole house? What all did you
Yeah,
renovate?
the whole house. Yeah, the whole
Right.
house is like
Renovated the whole house.
$5,000.
Yeah. And paid cash, didn't you?
Yeah.
See, did y'all hear that, people? Low income family and bought a house, renovated the house, and paid cash. They didn't go get no loan. They paid cash and did what they needed to do to take care of their home and responsibility. And so that right there is really, really powerful. So I want to take actually, no, I'm going to keep going. I was going to take a break, but I'm going to keep going. This is good. Real good. So we, I know that, so we set up the income, had that coming in. You bought the house, which was really, really great. And, actually, no, I'm going to make them take a break, and y'all are going to have to wait a minute for all this juicy story that's going on. We'll be right back. All right, folks, and we're back. Thank you so much for joining us again on this podcast. We are going to continue the conversation with Enam and Marquia. We were just talking about a little bit of their journey on how they went from, I want to call it zero to hero almost, but how they weren't from beginning, they didn't have any money saved. They were they were a lower income family. They were using their tax money to take care of things once a year and take care of others once a year as well, until it started becoming a habit. At least on the part of the family members, they started getting used to it. And so we were just kind of talking about that whole process, the fact that they came into some money by way of inheritance. And from that, they had some ups and downs throughout the journey on trying to figure out what and how to do with this money. And even with the best plans laid, it still became difficult because family members were still in their pocket from, just a habit that had just been formed, what had been allowed. And so they were able to triumph over that and get the victory to be able to still accomplish great things in spite of losing several $100,000. They still came out on top and still came out blessed. And so I just wanted to ask, how is the relationship now with your family members that were involved with that whole situation? How is that going now? Is it still kind of rocky? Still, is it a little bit better? Y'all on speaking terms? Kind of, where are you?
It's still kind of rocky.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't heard from him. My brother changed his number. Yeah, my sister, I haven't talked to her since July. So,
well, that's okay. And you used to talk to them on a regular basis?
Yes.
Gotcha. Well, that's okay. We serve a big God, and I can tell you firsthand, as a person who had strained relationships with some of my half siblings as well over the years, just because of how their relationship was with my father. We have made a choice to work on our relationship and build our relationship with all three of my half siblings since the time that my father has passed. So my point is, God is able. That's my point. And so I know that now, it will really do my father's his heart would be glad to know that we stay in contact, that we're talking, that we're trying to, do things when we are in town with each other, and that kind of thing. We're actively working on building a relationship. And so I think, my point to that is, with God, all things are possible. So, that's one of those things that you just have to pray and ask God to lead and guide you, because you can only do what you can do. And so maybe at some point in time in the future, God will allow those relationships will be fully mended in Jesus' name.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to retirement, so kind of fast forwarding to where you guys are now, I am so very proud of y'all. Y'all are doing really, really well. Y'all have been very, very disciplined. Number one, they've been very disciplined with their finances as a whole. They've been adding to their savings account. They have I'm not going to even tell you how much money they have, but just know it's a nice amount. They've done very, very well for themselves and been adding to the savings account, even though technically they don't have to, because they have their reserve, the required amount of reserve that they're supposed to have. But they're just being good stewards and understanding that, I'm going to keep adding to this pot as part of our discipline, because it's certainly not going to hurt. It's definitely going to help. And so they have been really disciplined with just saving money all the time, continuing to allow that to grow. And they have also, I know there was a point in time that because with fortunately for her, with the way her funds are set up, she will receive some additional money later in life. And so I want to take the time to talk about that a little bit, because this is an area that when people do come into this category, sometimes they don't know what is the best way to handle this type of thing. And I'm talking about a life settlement. So the way a life settlement option works is you can have a lump sum of money where they will pay you a set amount today, or if it was designated that you were supposed to get a certain amount of money for the rest of your life, sometimes people will opt to exchange or give up a certain number of years for receiving that money in exchange for getting the lump sum today. So let me break down what I mean, because I know some of y'all are like, okay, what? So what I'm saying is, let me give you a hypothetical. So let's say that maybe by age 30, 35, you're supposed to start receiving $10,000 a month. We'll just kind of hypothetical throw some numbers out here. Let's say that from this inheritance, you're supposed to start receiving at age 35, $10,000 a month for the rest of your life, as a hypothetical. All right. Then, but maybe you're broke right now. And maybe you're 30 now, maybe you're 25, and you're like, hey, I need money right now. So I don't want to wait until I'm 35 to start getting this $10,000. Can I get some of this money today? So let's say that this person is 25 and now they want some money today. So they can call the company where the money is being held and say, hey, how much money could I get today? And they may give them the choice of a settlement. So they may say, okay, well, instead of you getting money starting at age 35 for the rest of your life, you can get your money starting at age 55 for the rest of your life. And maybe we'll give you $200,000 today. Now it sounds really appealing, right? Like, okay, instead of me getting money at 35, now I'm going to wait until I'm 55 years old, and then I'll start receiving this $10,000 a month for the rest of my life. So I've given up 25 years of receiving $10,000 a month in exchange for receiving $200,000 today. Does it still sound good? At the outset, it sounds really good. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get $200,000. Yes, I need this money. I can do this. I can do this, and this. But let's think about the true cost. You cannot be driven by the dollar signs. You cannot just look at it and say, oh, that sounds like a good number. Give it to me. That is how the company gets over. And they make a large amount of money off of you because of doing this life settlement. So if you were to do the math, now I totally made up these numbers, guys. So the numbers might not be mathing, but I want you to get the concept of what I'm saying. So if we were to just do simple math and say, actually, yeah, let's do some simple math. So if we were to do the math and say $10,000 a month, we already know that's $120,000 a year times, I said 20 years, sorry, 35 to 55 is 20 years. So I said the money would start at age 55. So $120,000 times 20 years is $2.4 million. Now, in this hypothetical example, we're saying that this person is willing to wait from age 30 to age 55 to start receiving $10,000 a month, which means they're giving up $2.4 million in order to have $200,000 today. Does that make any sense? No, it does not. I can have 200,000 now. Huh? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm saying that's why they were blowing up her phone, because they knew that they can get 2.4 million off of that, which was similar to the amount that she was saying. They just kept calling her. Hey, you want to do this? You want to do that? I'm talking to my manager. You want to do this? You want to do that? And they were doing that because they knew that kind of amount that they could get.
Right.
And once you told us that, we was like, oh, shoot. Then when we saw them on the call ID, we like, don't answer it. Don't even answer it. You know what they want? Don't even answer it. Because now that we know, because we were just blind and foolish, so we're like, don't even answer it. We already know what's going on. So that's the good nugget for people who have lump sums or annuities. That these companies are really not in your favor. They're like salesmen. They want the bigger hits. They want the bigger amount for themselves and give
Mm-hmm.
you the short end of the stick at the end of the day. So it's not in your favor at all.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I wanted to make sure that I took the time to talk about that, because you never know who's coming into these situations, and they're, like you said, they're burning up your phone, and they're like, oh, they make it sound so good. Oh, we could just take care of this for you. You can have the money next week. It'll be in your account.
Yeah,
We're gonna hook you up. And when you broke
yeah,
and money is tight, anything
yeah,
sounds good. They could have said 100,000, and some people would be like, oh, okay, yeah. Send me that. Not knowing any better. Guys, we got to do the math, and we got to count the cost of our financial decisions before we say yes to stuff, especially when we're talking about long-term decisions. We really got to take
yeah.
our time and figure out on paper, does this actually make sense? And then you can make a decision. And if you're not sure how to calculate on paper, does this make sense? Then you seek counsel. You figure out, how do I get connected to the right financial person, the right financial advisor that's going to help me be able to figure these things out, and how to make my money last as long as I do, or longer, for generations to come. Because again, there's a big gap in generational wealth between, especially in the African American culture. Now, this is not an African American only podcast, but I have to say, as an African American person, it's a big problem within our culture and community that we have such a gap in the wealth building, and a lot of it is because of our limited knowledge, what we don't know. So how long are we going to allow that to be the problem before we say, hey, you know what? I need to seek counsel. I need to do something different because I desire to have a different result. I want to live a certain way. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We all have the ability to create the life that we want. God placed that inside of us. He gave all of us gifts and talents to be able to create. So we have the ability to create the life that we want. We got to know it. We got to own it. That's really the bottom line. So it's really, really important, like I said, when it comes to that life settlement, to make sure you understand how that works so that you don't get duped and get sucked into taking this lump sum of money, and they're just, in the meantime, they're just taking more and more from you, more and more from you. So luckily for Enam and Marquia in their situation, when they got the phone call about this possible option, they reached out to me and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. We need to know from you, is this a good idea? Should we, shouldn't we? And, I got on the phone with them and the company and was like, hey, just tell them you got your financial advisor on the phone and we got questions. And so we called them, and, I was able to ask the guy, because I wanted them to hear out of his mouth, not just me telling them, hey, this is what this looks like they're saying. Let's get on the phone with the guy, because I want you to have an understanding, and I want you to hear it from him saying that if you take this money, this means X, Y, Z, and this means how much you're going to get now. This is what you're giving up, etc. And so I repeated what he said. I wanted to make sure that they had a full understanding of what exactly was about to happen. And from that, it was easy to say no, And so they've been fine. They've been fine. Y'all have been doing great. Since then, everything is great. Your house is doing great. You got equity growing in your house, savings is great. Retirement's going to be great. And so because they made that conscious choice, like I was saying, retirement for them is great. Enam said he wanted to be able to retire by the age of 58. Please. He 58 is just a number. They're going to be well positioned to that. Retirement will be an option in the very, very short future. And so for that, I'm really, really, really proud of you guys. You guys have done so incredibly well. And I know that now that you're in this space, and now you're kind of in this new empowered phase of your life, I know it's only going to be up from here. Is there any final words that you want to say or share with us today?
Well, we thank you on behalf of the Montgomery family for really giving us the wisdom and the knowledge on what to do and what not to do, and just giving us painting the picture that it is possible from the ground up to do what you need to do with your money and your life and make better decisions. Because the roots, the foundation, if people are watching, is basically mastering better decisions and making good choices. Money is just money, but if you make good choices, then you're on your way from one step to another. So kudos to what you do on behalf of the Montgomery family.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. That is very kind. I really, really appreciate it. And just to note, y'all are no longer low income earners. Y'all have moved up a notch. Come on here. Hallelujah. I hear the applause in the background. Good job, guys. Good job, guys. Thank you so much again for hanging with me today. And for those of you that have watched or listened to this podcast today, I hope that it has encouraged you or inspired you in some shape, form, or fashion. I hope that you will share it with others, with family members, friends. I'm sure that you know somebody that probably could be blessed by this podcast today. Until next time, be blessed. Bye-bye.